Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is predict. Let's take a look at the meaning of this verb. It means to declare or tell that a specified thing will happen in the future, or to say something is going to be the consequence of something else. Many times we use predict in academic English. It's part of the reading process to think about what's being told to us in the moment and to also be thinking sort of ahead in the story. What is going to happen? Or where is this piece of writing headed? Predict is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, all we need to do is add ing. To make the past tense and participle forms, we're just going to add ed to the end. Because this verb ends with a t or t sound, the ed is going to make an id sound. Predicted, predicted. You might be relieved to know that we really don't use predict with other prepositions. So there are no phrasal verbs to discuss today. We're going to move on to looking at how to use predict in the simple past, present progressive, and something that might be a little new for you today, but we're going to talk about a past modal of possibility. So let's start off with simple past tense. In the affirmative, we're just going to use this ed form of the verb, and it doesn't matter what our subject is. It's always going to be the same form. Here's an example sentence. After watching 5 minutes of the movie, she predicted the ending. So, in other words, she said, this is what's going to happen. If I want to make a negative sentence in simple past, I'm going to use did not and then the base verb. Here's an example of that. They didn't predict that a pandemic would turn everyday life upside down. I think most people can sort of nod along with that statement. Finally, if I want to make a yes or no question in the simple past tense, I'm going to start with did, then I'll have my subject, and then the base verb. Here's an example sentence. Did the students predict what would happen to the main character? So again, this sentence might be something you hear in a classroom. Sometimes it's what might be on a test as well after reading a passage. Next, let's look at present progressive. And to do this, we're going to use a present form of be and then the ing form of the verb. Let's take a look at an example sentence. Weather forecasters are predicting a tropical storm later this week. So this is another example where you might hear predict used. I hear it pretty often whenever I watch TV news and specifically watch the weather segment of those news programs. We'll look at another example or form of that in just a couple minutes. If I want to make present progressive negative, what I need to do is insert not after the be verb. Here's an example. The doctor isn't predicting when the patient will recover. If I want to make a yes or no question in the present progressive, I'm going to start with a form of be that matches my subject, that comes next, and then I'll have the ing form of the verb. Are they predicting that many people will be evicted? And maybe evict is a new word for you, but it's a word I'm hearing used quite a bit lately. It's connected to the pandemic and how many people have lost their jobs and their unemployment benefits are decreasing, so they might not be able to make house payments or to pay their rent. And eviction is sort of the legal process to remove somebody from their home for non-payment or for breaking rules. Okay, let's go to our third form. And again, this might be a little new or different for you, but I imagine you have heard this in conversations or perhaps seen it when you're reading as well. We're going to look at a past modal of possibility. And maybe that phrase is a little new or different for you. But what we're going to use is the phrase could have and then the participle form of the verb. And we use this structure to talk about something that perhaps was possible in the past, or in a situation where someone had the ability to do something in the past, but for whatever reason chose not to do it or didn't do it. So let's take a look at an example sentence. The new volcano warning system could have predicted the 2019 eruption in New Zealand. So if you're a regular reader or watcher of the news, you might recall there was a large and deadly volcano eruption in New Zealand in 2019. There is new science and new technology that is trying to predict when a volcano might erupt. And they're developing that, and they're saying if that had existed, it could have warned people to get to a safe place to evacuate. I can use this same structure to also sort of explain like a negative possibility, right? So I'm just going to insert not after my modal. Here's an example of that. We couldn't have predicted how important Zoom would be before the pandemic. Perhaps you've used Zoom for class or for work, but it's a software, a program that allows us to meet virtually or through the internet. Finally, I can ask a question that expresses this past modal of possibility. And to do that, I'll start with the modal could, then I'll have my subject, and then have, and then the participle form of the verb. Here's an example of that. Could she have predicted their reaction? So again, this is sort of asking, was she able to do it? I've seen this past modal of possibility described as a verb tense that talks about a lost opportunity. So I thought that describes it pretty well. Let's take a look now at some words that are related to our verb predict. The first word is prediction. It's a noun. It could mean the action of predicting something. There's an example sentence. Many phones and computers now have word prediction. And really what that means is as you're typing, it might be suggesting the next word or might be suggesting a completed form of the word you've started. So again, it's kind of thinking into the future. Do you mean this? Do you want to say this next? Prediction could also relate to a forecast. And again, it comes back to that example about weather forecasters, meteorologists telling us what the weather is going to be like in a day, in a few days, or a week more. Here's an example. My prediction is that there will not be any rain in the next 5 days. So that might be a statement that a meteorologist uses to tell people what to expect in terms of the weather. Another related word is predictability. It's a noun, and its meaning is the consistent repetition of an action or behavior, something else connected or related to that, and it makes it possible to know in advance what to expect. Here's an example sentence. Scheduling predictability leads to greater worker retention. And let me explain maybe what this sentence means. So for some people, they might find out a week in advance that they're going to be working on Monday morning. And they'll have their times on Tuesday, Wednesday, etc. And then when they look at the schedule the following week, they're working on Monday afternoon. And then the week after that, they work Monday afternoon and evening. Right? So because it's always changing, the employee cannot predict when they might need to work. And that could make it very difficult to have childcare, could make it difficult for you to take a class, or just make other plans in your life. So if employees sort of know when they're expected to work, they tend to stay in the job longer. And that's what retention means, to keep an employee employed. Next, let's take a look at some adjectives. The first is predictable, right? And it means the ability to be predicted. Another way to say that is expected. Here's an example. The parents created predictable routines for their children to help them go to sleep. So again, if we think of that consistent repetition, so doing the same sort of thing every night, so they know, okay, it's about to be bedtime, that could be helpful in getting the child to go to sleep. The next adjective is connected to the one we just discussed. Unpredictable should be pretty easy to figure out because that prefix un means not. And that's really the definition of this word, not predictable. Here's an example. Colleges are preparing for an unpredictable fall semester. There's still so much we don't know about COVID-19 and how it's going to impact in-person classes. Is it safe for students to go back and live in their dormitories? Is it safe to have groups or clubs meet? So that's what this sentence is referring to, that there are many things unknown. And we don't know how much worse things might get in a month, 2 months, or 3 months. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.